For the next 8 weeks, Gardener's World is extending to a full hour. We shall be bringing you the best of gardening from right across the country.
Wow, wow, wow. This is strikingly different from pretty much anything else you can see in Britain.
This garden is packed full of the biggest flowering plant family in the entire world.
You know, I'm so excited about this garden. There's going to be so many surprises.
The team has been out and about, visiting gardens big.
I like a rockery where the rocks take centre stage.
Never before have I used a winch to get a shrub out.
And small.
There's some real challenges in this border, but in fact there's some really, really easy solutions.
Job done. Et voila.
And meeting gardeners of every kind.
Such a plantsman's paradise, but it's also got a great sense of humour.
So this is the moment of truth.
As well, of course, as celebrating our most beautiful plants. Hello, welcome to Gardener's World. Well, it's a new beginning at this time of year. There's a sense of going back to school, autumn coming in, summer has gone, and everything is changing. But I love September. I love the way that the light in September is better than at any other time of year. It has a kind of fragile quality to it. And of course, added to that is the poignancy that the days are getting shorter. And there is this sense of wanting to hold and treasure every moment of the days and the hours that we have in our gardens. And on top of all that, there's masses to do. On tonight's programme, we explore unusual gardens in both the countryside and the city.
I'm starting my quest in Sheffield. Wow, this is really surprising.
Today I'm in Toxteth, Liverpool. A group of local people have literally been greening the streets.
I mean, it just raises your spirits.
And I'll be here in Devon, exploring some surprising family ties.
As well as all that, we've got the weekend's weather. And we'll also be paying our first visit to Adam Frost's new garden, and I'm off to Kew. But more of that later. I've been meaning to get in the pond and give it a bit of a sort out, particularly the yellow irises, the Iris pseudochorus, which have really expanded in the last year or so. Right, just concentrate for a second. Whoops, not the most elegant of procedures. This is the Canna erebus that I planted a month ago, the water canna, which seems to be fine. Got the flowering rush, and I love the purple loosestrife. Moving slowly for two reasons. One, because it's very slippery, and there are dips and hollows, and two, I don't want to disturb the frogs and newts that I know are in here. Iris pseudochorus, it's a native iris, and because it's native, once it gets established, it makes itself very much at home. These were planted in spring 2012, and haven't been touched, absolutely left alone. And at the moment, it's forming a bit of a wall, so I need to clear that out. And now is actually a good time to do it. The water is nice and warm at this time of year, so if you move plants, or if you disturb them at all, that isn't going to be a major problem. Warm water, the roots will quickly grow back. All this is planted in baskets, aquatic baskets. The basket's in there, and this has grown out the side of it. There we go. So that is a perfectly good plant. And it was just connected to the parent by one rhizome. As you can see, that's where I cut there. There we go. What I'm trying to do is clear back through this so I can see through these lovely upright leaves. And of course I don't want to get rid of them. I love the iris. These beautiful yellow flowers, the end of May, June, they're bright, they're held tall above the water, they're perfect. So it's not a question of lessening the value I'm getting from the plant, it's just managing it so that it fits in well with everything else. Now I can either be ruthless and compost this on the basis that I've got too many, or if I want to replant it in the other pond or give it away, I can pot this up in an aquatic basket. And I can either put it into gravel, where it will be fine as long as it's in water, or just some ordinary garden soil. Put this into a big enough basket, an aquatic basket with holes, pack the soil around it and over it so it can stand upright without falling over, and that can be lowered into water, and this will go on and live and in turn spread quite happily. Put that in There. Well, I've created a little mini havoc, but it'll settle down. And I have got the effect I want, which is to be able to see through the iris foliage, rather than just it becoming a wall that's blocking other plants that I want to see. Now, these aquatic irises come under the Iridaceae family, as indeed every plant finds its niche in some family or other. And over the next 4 weeks, Carol is going to be celebrating some of those amazing plants in family groups. And we're joining her down at RHS Rosemore in Devon, where she is beginning with the buttercup.
Most of us think of plants as belonging to one big, happy family, but they don't. There are hundreds of different plant families. DNA testing allows us to identify exactly which group a plant belongs to, but not many of us have our own DNA testing kit. But we can rely on our eyes to see similarities in the characteristics between plants and get a pretty good idea of which family they belong to. Botanists have grouped plants into over 400 plant families, containing over 300,000 species. One of those families is Ranunculaceae, with more than 2,000 species. It's also known as the buttercup family. The buttercup itself gives us lots of clues about the characteristics of the Ranunculaceae family. It has single flowers. Lots of them do. Clematis, Aquilegias. Most of these flowers look as though they're composed of petals, but very few are. The buttercup is one of the few that has both petals and sepals. If you look at this clematis, this bud is actually formed of sepals. It protects the inner workings of the flower, and then as it grows and expands, it opens up and becomes much more brilliantly colourful. At that stage, insects are drawn into the centre here. They're drawn in both to the pollen, which is contained in lots and lots of stamens. Nearly the whole family have a multitude of stamens, but they're also attracted to the nectar that lies deep within the flowers. In most Ranunculaceae, the leaves are borne in one of two ways. They're either basal, they come actually from the base of the plant, or they're coalescent, they're borne up the flower stems. The Ranunculaceae family has a plant for almost every condition and every aspect. Delphiniums for full sun, water crowfoot for stream or pond. Perfect for livening up a dank late winter garden is Helleborus hybridus, and for shade, one of the most poisonous of plants, the aconite. There are no trees within the family Ranunculaceae. The great majority of buttercups are perennials, with an odd sprinkling of annuals, plants like larkspur and nigella. If you've got a small garden, it's really vital to maximise every inch of space, and vertical space is particularly important. That's where the clematis comes into its own. It really does make an impact. This is a member of Ranunculaceae. It's a Japanese anemone, a very familiar plant. It's a woodland plant, so it runs just under the surface of the soil, and it makes these roots, each of which has little nodules all the way along it, and each one of those nodules is capable of making a brand new shoot. So what I want to do is select a couple of roots that are fairly substantial, pieces like this, and I'm just going to tease them away from the pot. All I want to do is cut these into small pieces. I want to remove any of those fibrous roots at the side of there, because they're not going to grow yet. And then I want to cut it in little pieces. Chunks about 1 inch, 2.5 centimetres long. When I've got some bits, I'll just get my seed tray and place them on the top, like this. I can probably get about 20 or 30 little cuttings in there. Cover them with some grit. Water it really well and put it in a nice, light, bright place. Eventually, you'll see little shoots developing. Leave it a few weeks after that, when they'll make root. And then, when you feel they've developed properly, take them out and pot them up individually. With a bit of luck, your root cuttings will flourish, and within no time at all, you'll have a wonderful big clump like this gorgeous anemone hybrid Honorine Jobert. I suppose it typifies the kind of plants that are within this family. It's incredibly elegant and yet very, very subtle. Whatever the conditions in your garden, there's bound to be a member of the Ranunculaceae family which suits your garden perfectly.
I find it fascinating the way that plants that seem so unconnected, when you find out they're in the same family and you start to look into them more closely, you do see the family resemblance. And that, of course, does help you in how you grow them and how you place them in the garden. Now, a buttercup that Carol didn't talk about, although she did talk, of course, about the Japanese anemone, is Anemone blanda. Lovely, starry spring flower. And now we're in September, it's time to think about planting spring bulbs. And one of the things that I like to do first, before I start putting them in the ground, not least because the ground is often very hard, is to start planting up pots. And the beauty of growing bulbs in pots is that it means you can grow any type of bulb, because you can create the right conditions for it in the pot. It also means if you don't have a garden, you can have a fabulous spring display. Now, Anemone blanda are essentially a woodland plant. They're like light shade, and they're like nice, loose, friable soil that you get on a woodland floor. Now, I've got a general purpose potting mix which I use for planting bulbs in pots. And it's a mixture of our own compost, a little bit of proprietary peat-free compost, some coir, and lots of grit. You can see it's really free draining. And by and large, you won't go wrong if you get a peat-free potting compost and then add plenty of grit. The counsel of perfection for the anemone, actually, is to add some leaf mould. If you have got leaf mould, then add some of that too. So I am going to put a little bit of leaf mould in the bottom, a little bit of this, and then mix it up, just like preparing pastry. Now, anemone tubers look, quite frankly, like goat droppings. They're small, black, and very hard indeed. And it's a good idea to soak them before using them. These have been in here for a couple of hours. Overnight is perfect. Now, when you're growing bulbs in a pot, you don't need to worry about planting depth too much, and you don't need to worry about spacing them too far apart. This is an intense hit of colour, and you can repot them or replace them next year. So that will do. And we'll put a bit of compost over the top, like that. And then I will dress it with some grit. And this will do two things. One, it will stop the surface either getting too wet or capping. And capping is when soil gets wet and then dries out. And the surface dries out much quicker than that below it. So it forms a hard crust. And the rather delicate shoots sometimes can't work their way through that. The second reason is that it stops the water splashing up after the plants have grown and spattering the petals with the compost from the surface of the pot. It keeps them clean. And thirdly, it looks nice. So we've got that there. I will write a label in case I forget. And of course, you can get an anemone blanda that are white, you can get them pink, and this wonderful blue. I've got another blue which I want to put in the pot too. Earlier on, I was looking at the flag iris, Iris pseudochorus. Well, same family, Iris reticulata. And it's one of my favourite iris of all. It's got such intense colours. And this is a variety called Harmony, which has got just a jewel-like blue that's almost mauve. It's really rich and strong, and flowers the end of January, February time. And at that time of year, it blazes out of the late winter, early spring light. And what this likes is drainage, drainage, and then when you've done some drainage, give it a bit more drainage. So this very gritty compost is perfect as it is. If you're growing them outside, you need to have very free draining soil. It likes growing in there because that keeps it dry and stops it getting too wet. Or if you've got a rock garden, they will grow. But I just grow it in pots. Don't worry about spacing. Pack them in. And as long as you remember to stick them pointy side up, you won't go far wrong. Oh, that looked like it could be a biscuit. It's not. It's an Iris reticulata, I'm afraid. I find in pots that they last for about 2 or 3 years. And then they start to feel a little bit unhappy. They need watering when you plant them, and maybe at most watering once a month after that, but no more. Now, I actually keep these in an open-sided cold frame. So they're protected on top by a glass top, and that keeps them dry. But if you haven't got a cold frame, then put them somewhere a little bit sheltered. And don't put them in a heated greenhouse either. You don't want that. You want them to be fairly cold. But if you can provide that range of conditions, they will provide you with just stunning spring colour. Now, a growing problem over the last 10 or 20 years has been the very lack of colour in our front gardens. And that's because, not unreasonably, people have been increasingly using them as somewhere to park their cars. However, there is a slight change in this trend, and Flo Headlam is starting a series looking at ways that we can refresh and renew our slightly lost urban spaces.
The RHS Greening the Grey campaign has discovered that 1 in 4 gardens in the UK is paved over. But it doesn't have to be like this. I want to find ways of making the most of our urban spaces and turning the grey to green. Today I'm in Toxteth, Liverpool. Like many neighbourhoods around the country, it's had its difficulties, but the community has taken matters into its own hands. A group of local people have literally been greening the streets, and I'm keen to get some inspiration. Hello, hi. Hazel. Hi, Helen.
Hiya.
So, what's the story? When did it all start?
It started planting about 12 years ago in response to the fact that the area was being emptied out because the plans were for total demolition. We just basically started to clean up the streets and paint and then plant.
So why is it so important to green the grey, to grow stuff?
Because it makes us happy. It just raises your spirits.
It's almost like an insanity at some point, because if you're living in such a derelict, neglected area, that can drive you mad.
Absolutely.
So you take up a new madness as a cure, and the madness was the power of planting.
Wow, I love that, the power of planting. Yeah.
The nice thing that the planting has started the renovation of the houses. It's been a catalyst for the whole change. Yeah. And stubborn women have been a catalyst as well, yeah. What we'd like to see is it taking off like an epidemic, like a rash. And we'd like to see rashes of pots and plants along every street, everywhere.
Yeah. People choose to walk through this street, and you can see people slowing down as they get to the planter and just looking.
Community spirit, a desire for positive change, and planting has transformed this area of Toxteth into a colourful and vibrant community. I've been inspired by what people have done here, and I'm keen to get involved and play my part. I'm going to demonstrate just how easy it is to transform the smallest of front gardens. I think the best way to do this is with container gardening. It's simple and really effective. Now's the really exciting part. I get to put together some great plants and create some wonderful combinations for the garden. So, let's get going. My first thing is I want some height. So, this is the cotinus. Just taking it out of the pot now, I'm just going to tease the roots a little bit, just to give them a chance to help them to spread. And let's just put it in. Okay, so next to my cotinus, I'm going to put in some crocosmia. There we go. I want some big leaves. I want some big, bold leaves. So I'm going to put this canna in here. So to add another dimension, I'm going to put in fuchsia, which is beautiful. This has got this variegated leaf with a pink tinge on it, and it's trailing as well. So it will grow, and it will just cascade over the side of the pot. So this combination looks really exotic. So a final firm press, and then we have our first combination. I think that's great. I love that. For my next pot, I'm going to put these geraniums in this planter. Now, we all know geraniums are that classic Mediterranean summer plant, so for full sun, it's ideal. But because we're putting it on the windowsill, which is slightly tilted, a good tip is to put some grit in the bottom just to help to give it some stability. So I think we'll put 3 in, because 3 is always a good number. It looks really nice, and they're in like that. Geraniums, they have a long flowering season, so they give you lots of pleasure. So it doesn't have to just be flowers that you plant, actually. You can think outside the box and, put together a beautiful combination of herbs that you can have growing just by the door, so it's just easy, convenient for you to just grab a handful when you need to cook. And now the really fun bit is I get to place all the plants. So in this one I've got hot colours. Job done. Et voila. This front garden belongs to Majid and his partner Maxine. They were so inspired by the way the area's been transformed that they've moved back. I can't wait to see their reaction. Hey, hi guys.
Hello, hi.
Come outside.
Okay.
Come see the magic.
Hi. Wow.
What do you think?
Boss, brilliant.
Come round this side and have a look.
Oh, it's absolutely gorgeous. Oh, I love this.
Yeah, that
It's
colour
really
is
nice.
gorgeous, isn't it? And that's picked up here with the
orange.
cosmos.
All the neighbours have been wanting it now.
Thank you very much.
You know,
My
thank you
pleasure,
very
my
much.
pleasure. Enjoy.
Thanks very much. Oh, brilliant.
The nurseryman Nick Mesa has a passion for exotic plants, and in a new series, he's travelling the length and breadth of Britain to explore some unexpected tropical delights.
There are, can you believe, over 5,000 islands that make up the British Isles, boasting a huge range of microclimates, from wide open fells like here in the Peak District to dripping wet Atlantic temperate rainforest. This country really is a haven for plants from across the world. Our nation is bathed by the Gulf Stream, which raises our temperature, on average, 5 degrees centigrade above the global average for our latitude. This means Britain is warmer and more temperate as a result. I'm here to meet a man who's done something that might seem impossible. He's brought the Southeast Asian tropics to the heart of the industrial north. This Sheffield suburban house hides a jungle of tropical-looking exotics, palms, umbrella plants, and 15 types of bamboo.
This is my best crocodile. I've always had an interest in reptiles and amphibia.
I have to admit, Simon, that is quite some specimen.
So, Nick, this is one of my favourite bamboos. It's Phylostachys vivax aureocorlis.
I do grow this, I admit, but it is nowhere near as big as yours. What is your secret?
It needs extra moisture and food. I actually build a compost heap on top of it. So a lot of my shreddings from the garden go onto this compost heap, and it creates a really rich environment, which, of course, this plant loves, and it just romps away.
Now, there are a lot of people, Simon, that would be very wary about growing bamboo of any sort in their garden, but I think there's a really important point to be made here about clumpers and spreaders, right?
Absolutely, Nick. I mean, there's a bamboo really for every situation. I've created a jungle effect here with some bamboos which move about quite a lot, and many of them are unsuitable for the average small suburban garden. Having said that, there are a lot of bamboos who are tight clumpers, and those will never spread, and you really need to pick the bamboos for your own situation using expert advice.
Simon has a wide range of rare bamboos. The finest of the hardy blue stem species, Orinda papyrifera, the fantastic knobbly caned Chinese walking stick bamboo, Kimono bambusa, Tumidis inoda, and even the species which is the favourite food of the giant panda, Bashania figessii. For me, one of the great joys here are some fantastic umbrella plants. Normally seen as houseplants or on foreign holidays, Simon has hardy, mature Schefflerers thriving in Sheffield. Simon, this is really surprising. What made you think about planting a tropical paradise in Sheffield?
Well, to be honest with you, Nick, I was really enthused by plants, particularly jungle plants, but I don't fly. I've flown once and I was terrified. So really, the chance of me experiencing jungle is not very high. I decided I'd try as best I could to create my own jungle. So that's what I've attempted to do here. Some evergreen trees, which I just love, the sort of things that come from Southeast Asia, some very tropical looking plants, which are surprisingly, if they're collected in the right location, are hardy. With those tools, you can create a very jungly and a very exotic atmosphere.
So how does this garden survive in the Sheffield climate?
Well, I think our situation, which is 3/4 of the way down quite a steep hill, allows for very good air drainage.
So the cold air is sinking deep into the valley bottom, past your garden.
Yeah.
You're not sitting in that frost bucket.
Yeah. I'm able to create, really, what I hope is, what I feel is, a very jungly and very tropical-looking garden.
Well, I think you have certainly done that, without a doubt. Wow. Simon, I am loving this huge hardy snow gum. The snow gum is a species which originates high on Australia's tallest mountains. It's naturally tough. Like so many plants here, the snow gum is a close relation of more tender tropical species, but it's one which thrives in the British climate. What's the story behind this one?
Well, to be honest with you, Nick, I grew it from seed 28 years ago.
Wow, so it's been witness to your garden maturing to the state it is now.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
It's been here all that time.
What a tree and what an achievement.
Thanks very much.
I always love it when you come across a garden that you feel couldn't possibly have anything other than the hardiest of plants, and suddenly you find exotics completely at home. Mind you, this banana, this is Enseti, the Abyssinian banana, are really tender. And, you know, it's said that you only have to say the word frost and they shrivel up and give up the ghost. So I'll bring those in probably in about 3-4 weeks' time, even if the weather is good, because if there's just an overnight snap and it dips below zero, that can kill them. Now, if you grow plants that shouldn't survive in your part of the world, or you're particularly proud of because they're exotic and tropical and unusual, well, share them with us. You can do that two ways. You can either post them on our Facebook page, or you can email us a picture and an account of them, and you can get our email address from our webpage. Coming up on the programme, we meet a man devoted to growing one of the most dramatic members of the buttercup family.
What I love about delphiniums is their wow factor.
And Adam Frost moves into a new house with a garden that's full of potential to create a space for all the family to enjoy.
This is more or less crying out to make a big herbaceous border. This could look absolutely brilliant.
There's no question that some of the borders that we have here at Longmeadow are really big, and they take a lot of plants and a lot of looking after. But when I heard that earlier this year, the Royal Botanic Garden at Kew had opened what was the largest herbaceous border in the world, I thought that was something I really had to go and see. "30-odd years ago when I lived in London, I often used to come to Kew on a Sunday. And I always made a beeline for Decimus Burton's Palm House, which is this extraordinary upturned boat of a glass building. And then walked through the grounds, going down this long, broad promenade, flanked by trees taking you down to the palace and the orangery. And although it was a lovely place to come to, and although there were masses of specialist plants, what was notable was the absence of what one might call a herbaceous border. A mixed border that made it more like a garden rather than a place of study. Well, that has changed, and changed in a big way. The landscape architect William Nesfield designed the boardwalk in 1848, with huge deodar cedars on either side. But it's never truly shown off Kew's botanical expertise, until now. And after 3 years of evolution, Kew has finally got it right. The scale of Nesfield's boardwalk means that the planting has to be of an equal, extraordinary scale. So what they ended up with are the largest herbaceous borders ever created in the world. Richard Wilford is the head garden designer who, with his team, has created horticultural history here at Kew. As a gardener, I'm fascinated by the logistics. I mean, preparing the soil must have been a major thing.
Well, it was. I mean, it's, you know, I think I worked out about an acre this whole border covers, all the cultivated ground. We had about 1,000 tonnes of compost to put on it to dig it in.
How many plants?
There's about 30,000 plants in this border. So it's the whole border's 320 metres on each side. So it's a huge number of plants.
And it looks as though it's mirroring pretty much.
It is. It's a mirror image on each side of the path.
I see you have these U cones spaced along. Were these always part of the plan, or did you add them in?
No, they were one of the first things I put in, actually. I wanted to create that formality that, you know, Nesfield intended, and it just brings the whole landscape into the path.
What were the limitations that you had to work with, other than the path itself?
Well, this border is seen from both sides. It's not like a traditional border, which is often against a wall or a hedge, so we really needed to make sure that it looked good from whatever angle.
So does that mean you got your tallest plants in the middle?
Sometimes, not always. I like to mix it up a bit. I didn't want to just have a big mound, so, you know, kind of vary the heights a bit throughout the border. But yes, generally, the higher plants towards the middle.
And what are your themes that you've pursued?
Well, because this is Kew, I wanted to try and link a bit to what Kew does as an organisation, and it's science, really. So I've kind of themed some of these circles based on certain plant families. So this one, for example, is a Lamiaceae family, which is a mint family. It's got loads of great plants for summer colour, which is helpful, like salvias and stachys and perovskias. But it's also linked to a lot of Kew research and the essential oils a lot of these plants contain.
You're under great pressure to provide a public display. Did you have to get in big plants from day one?
No, we actually used 9-centimetre pots, partly due to the quantity we had to put in. And this was all planted in last October, and it's grown fantastically.
I like being able to see this in its very early stages. Yes, it will get more magnificent in a year or two, but it's so interesting at this stage. So you can see, for example, the way that the sedums have a texture completely different to the foliage of the Achillea, let alone the colour that you get on top, and then behind it, the Discampsia, soft and billowing. So already you're building up a tapestry of texture and colour that will only enlarge and get stronger over time. So if you've got a big space, don't be tempted to fill it with a few big plants. Go for lots of small plants. Much better effect, much better value for money. The closer you look at these borders, the more you realise that they're based upon simplicity. I love the way that the purple of the salvia flowers picks up the chocolate colour on the selenium stems and then their delicate frondy foliage with the Cirsium rivulare topped by these glorious plum-coloured flowers. Just 3 plants, but you couldn't improve it by adding anything else. Inevitably, some plants grow faster than others, and at this stage, they've not necessarily reached their final heights. But it is interesting to see the way that you don't have to have the tallest plants at the back, or even the middle. You can have tall plants like this agastache in the front of the border. So you look through it and pick out colours and pick out shapes and foliage in the background. These borders are quite unlike anything I've seen before. They're a once-in-a-lifetime experience. And if I lived in London or anywhere near, I would certainly come and visit them as often as I possibly could over the next few years, to see them come into being and share this remarkable horticultural experiment.
But it's not just in our great gardens that we find stunning plant collections. Right across the country, there are gardeners cultivating their own particular plant passions. And in Hemel Hempstead, Graham Austin has dedicated his life to growing one member of the buttercup family.
What I love about delphiniums is their wow factor. A lot of plants rely on real bright colours to give them a wow factor, where the delphiniums don't. All the colours blend in together, so you've got the dusky pinks, the blues, the violets, they all blend in together. One of my favourites is Delphinium Walton Benjamin. So it's this real electric blue with a black and blue striped eye. Absolutely stunning. And if that was at the bottom of your garden, it would show off a mile. It would look spectacular. There's short varieties, 3.5 foot high, so they're for the smaller gardens. You've got the mid varieties, 5 to 6 foot, so they're slightly bigger gardens. And if you've got an old Victorian wall, you've got the 6 to 8 foot variety. So yeah, they blend in all different gardens. People think delphiniums are difficult to grow. They're not. They're very tough, hardy perennials. It's getting the right strain of delphinium. And the most popular delphinium is a Pacific Giant. It's all right as a delphinium, but it's not a true hardy perennial. Elatum delphiniums is what you need. And most delphinium florets are semi-double, so this is a semi-double. Then we go to the doubles. So they have no eye in the centre, and this is Susan Edmonds. So that's an eyeless double. And then you go on another stage to the rosebud doubles. And this one's Alice Artindale. My parents used to take myself and my brother to a nursery every other Sunday or something like that. And I used to love going into this nursery and the smell of the greenhouse after they'd watered it was lovely. And I used to take cuttings off different plants. I didn't have a clue what I was doing. My parents' garden is full of old conifers and things that I'd rooted. Love being outside, I love the nature, the birds, the wildlife. So the option for me was to be a nurseryman when I left school, yeah. Well, delphiniums, they're actually an alpine plant, so they love very cold conditions. The colder it is, the better. If that goes down to -10 here this winter, these will not worry about the cold. They go dormant, they rest, and then they've got the energy to produce this great big spike the next summer. A delphinium will begin to flower about mid-June, and it takes about 3 weeks for the whole spike to run out and come in full flower. But I think the actual flowering lasts about 6 weeks, because these florets, as they start to open, I think they're as good as a flower. There's some varieties, they glow, and that's as good as any flower to me, anyway. But if you cut the delphinium right down to the ground after it's finished flowering, clear it all out and give it a dose of fertiliser, usually in September, October, you'll get a good second flowering. They are quite vulnerable to slugs, delphiniums. You've got to keep the slugs off, especially at the early stages. So we recommend, when you cut down your delphinium for the winter, you cover it with sharp sand or horticultural grit. Some people put it round the delphinium. We actually cover it. It looks like a load of molehills here in the winter, and then you've got to use slug control in the spring. One thing you must do with your delphiniums, either a young or an old plant, is thin them. So in March, April, you'll notice that your delphinium will have, it could have as much as 30 or 40 little stems, they're potential flowers, but that's too many. So you want to thin them out. You just get a knife and you cut them down to ground level and leave the thick ones. In a young plant, you'd leave 3 stems, and as the plant gets older, you'd leave 5, 7 or 9 stems. No more than that, really, and that will give you better flower spikes. Also, it lets the air through the centre of the plant, and that helps with slug control, and it just helps with the overall health of your plant. After you've thinned your delphinium, you want to stake your plant. Now, this is very important. If they're not staked, this main spike will lean over and split the crown at the bottom, and then water will get in and the crown will rot. We use 4-foot canes, and we do 3 as a triangle round the plant. So they're in a cage, really, and they just sway, they hit the string, and then sway back. The one thing you don't want to do is stake each flower spike separately to a cane tightly, because all would happen, the wind would blow and it would just snap. This is my trials area. Now, a lot of these are not really up to scratch at the moment, but this little one here, this is a very tight double, and I'm quite pleased with that one. Doubles are not that common, so this one I'm going to grow on for another couple of years, and if it stays good and keeps producing nice flowers, then hopefully we'll have a chance of naming that delphinium. Names, that's difficult. I've got 2 children, so we've got Rebecca, and that's obviously got a bit of pink. Then we've got Scott, so we're thinking a white Arctic Scott. I'm glad I didn't have any more children. Last year, no delphiniums were registered, so we need more people growing delphiniums and just growing them and hybridising them, making them more popular, because they're lovely plants. They deserve to be more popular.
Well, I love delphiniums, and Graham's absolutely right. Cut them back, and almost certainly they'll regrow and reflower, like this one behind me, which I cut back in July. They're not difficult to grow. They will always give you pleasure, and they're tough. Longmeadow's a hard place for plants. It's wet and it's cold in winter, and delphiniums seem to thrive in it. I've got some seeds to sow into the cutting garden, and now is a really good time to sow hardy annuals. If you sow these, they will germinate nice warm soil and hopefully establish roots right into the end of October before the weather gets cold. They will last the winter. They are hardy, after all, and then they've got a head start and will grow away next spring. Whereas if you leave the sowing till next spring, they will flower up to a month later. And I'm going to sow a relative of the delphinium, the larkspur, as well as some cornflowers. This larkspur is a variety called White King. About 3 foot tall, flowers for a nice long time, about 4 weeks, and apparently, because I've not grown it before, lasts a good long time when it's cut. And of course, when you're choosing cut flowers, that's an important consideration. It's got to look good, but ideally keep looking good for up to a week or more. Now, as with all seed sowing, thinness and wide spacing is a virtue. Now, a good tip for larkspur is to vernalise them. And what that means, basically, is giving them a taste of winter. And then they think it's spring when they come out, and they're more likely to germinate. And the easiest way to do that is just put the packets of seed in the freezer for a week or 2. What I'll do is I have these couple of rows in here now, and then I'll sow another couple of rows next March, or as soon as the ground is dry enough to take them. These will flower first, and then I'll get good succession, so I get a nice continuous supply of lovely white flowers. But I also want to sow some cornflowers in here too. I've got a variety called double blue, which is a lovely, brilliant blue. And of course, cornflowers you think of as a field flower, a wildflower, and so we can grow them in our gardens as lovely flowers, beautiful for bringing indoors, and also as a link to the countryside. They have quite curious shaped seed. These don't need vernalisation. September can be dry, so give them a water and don't let them dry out, and then they will germinate and grow up. And these are tough seedlings, so you really don't need to mollycoddle them at all. This part of the garden was originally made as a vegetable garden. But of course, before that, it was an empty field. And when we came here 25, 26 years ago, the only garden that existed was in my mind. It was all a dream. And Adam Frost has moved to a new home in Lincolnshire, where he plans to make a garden for himself and his family. And we join him as he begins that adventure.
Looking back, gardening has been a big part of my life, ever since I can remember. I even had my own patch on Nan and Grandad's allotment, with a little sign with my name painted on it. At 16, I started on North Devon Parks Department as an apprentice gardener. I then went on and trained as a landscaper before my lucky break, which was working for Jeff Hamilton at Barnsdale. This year I've taken on my biggest challenge yet, I moved my family to this beautiful old house and garden in the heart of the Lincolnshire countryside. I want to carefully coax and nurture this wonderful old place into the true family garden that the whole tribe can enjoy. Back in March, just a few weeks before the family and I were due to move in, I went to have a look at the new garden. I was full of mixed emotions, excited, but at the same time nervous about what we were about to take on.
This beautiful old garden is big, but do you know what? It's full of atmosphere. You can really see in the past that somebody cared about this space. I mean, you look at this. You know, I've got this wonderful, wonderful walled space. This wall here is south-facing. So for me, you know, this is more or less crying out to make a big herbaceous border, widen these out, and have that sort of colour, that texture, that scent. You know, right through the summer, this could look absolutely brilliant. You know, I'm so excited about this garden. I think that's going to be the most difficult thing for me, is actually being patient. There's going to be so many surprises thrown up in the next 12 months. But I think actually, in reality, to get this garden right, it'll be about me sort of gently adding ideas.
This garden's got all the growing conditions you could imagine. It's full of exciting opportunities, from mini redesigns to replanting projects.
Every great garden should have a beautiful house, and I've got that. But I'll let you into a little secret. The reason I took this place on was that wisteria. I think it must have gone in the same time as the house was built. I've worked out which one it is. It's Wisteria sinensis, because it grows anti-clockwise. It's absolutely beautiful. The garden's not just for me, it's for the family as well, and they all want to get stuck in and grow some veg. I've got this cracking little sort of extra space that's close to the house, and I think for me this is going to be the kitchen garden. But I want to put a contemporary twist on it. You know, you look at the space, it's light, it's airy, it's wrapped by those walls. You know, this lovely warm wall here, we can get the fruits and we can play with things like that. Somewhere that I can actually get the kids involved, you know. More than anything, I really want this garden to have like a contemporary edge to it.
At first, I always recommend that you wait for your new garden to reveal its secrets. But there is a job that will unlock the potential of your new patch, and you can do that at any time. For me, one of the first things you need to do when you get a new garden is really start to understand the soil. You need to know what you can grow and actually what you can't grow. So I've gone around the garden and I've collected up 5 samples, all from different areas. So even in a small space, you can have slightly different soils and makeup. But make sure when you're actually taking that sample that you're digging down a good couple of inches before you actually start to take the sample. This sample's from the rose garden. What I like to do is pour it out in my hand, just start to squeeze. And straight away, it starts to go into quite a firm shape, which tells me instantly there's quite a lot of clay in there. So the next thing I do is start to actually run my thumb through. And now all of a sudden I can feel sand, I can feel grit, and I can feel that it's slightly silty. So for me, that's a decent garden soil. And that's probably had years of goodness and someone's worked that really, really well. But if I look at somewhere that's going to be the veg garden, which I don't know what's gone in there, it's an old yard, it could have had animals in there, but actually at the same time, it might have just been a storage yard. I roll that out in my hand, instantly feels different. Feels crumblier, feels stonier. I can feel grit in there, and you can see it's starting to fall through my hands. It more or less feels like the nutrients will drain out of that soil. I think that's another thing as well. When you're understanding your soils, you know, clay soil we all moan about because we think it's hard work, but actually it holds those nutrients in. Whereas sandy soils, lovely, easy to dig, but the nutrients drain out. So it tells me really in reality is that when the veg garden's completed, this soil's going to need a lot of work, a lot of organic matter to really build up those nutrients and put that structure back into that soil. Whilst you're investigating your soil, for just a few quid, you can pick up a kit from the garden centre and test how acidic or alkaline it is. It's a little bit fiddly, but it's well worth doing. Testing the pH level will make sure you know what plants you can grow. My soil sample is alkaline, which means that I can grow an awful lot of things, but I'm going to avoid choosing those ericaceous plants, things like rhododendrons and camellias, that love those acidic soils. Do you know, if I think back to that 16-year-old kid starting off, I mean, this garden's beyond my wildest dreams. To think now I'm custodian of this space is really quite special.
Adam is too modest to mention it himself, but of course he has won many gold medals from Chelsea and is a very, very talented garden designer. So his garden is going to be something special. But he's going to be very busy, but then so are you, because here are some jobs for the weekend. For those of us growing tomatoes, it's now a race against time to get as many as possible to ripen.
And by cutting off the tops of the plant down to the top truss with fruit on it, you will put the energy into the green tomatoes so that they ripen as quickly as possible. To ensure a good display from camellias, rhododendrons and azaleas, especially those growing in containers, it's important to water them well for the rest of this month. And this will ensure that the buds, which are forming now, don't drop off before they open next spring.
Now, nothing affects our gardens more than the weather. So here it is for this weekend.
Hello there. It's been another very dry week across the UK, certainly across southern areas. Some gardens really crying out for the rain, but you will be in luck, I think, for Saturday. Looks like this area of low pressure swinging in will bring some substantial rain to parts of England and Wales as the day wears on. We could see further heavy pulses of rain across southern parts of Wales and southern England through the course of Saturday evening. Add on those strong southwesterly winds, it's going to feel pretty autumnal, it has to be said. But that will clear out into the North Sea. Looks like it's turning a little bit quieter across England and Wales. By the end of Saturday night. Still some rain across Scotland and Northern Ireland. But it means for Sunday, a brighter day with some sunshine, a few showers across northern, central and eastern areas. So a good-looking day to get out and about in the garden. And feeling a little bit warmer as well because those winds will be lighter, 18 to maybe 23 Celsius in the southeast. But that really is about it rain-wise, because as we head into next week, things are set to turn much warmer and much more summery once again.
At a time of year when the garden is dominated by exotic plants from all over the world. You've got bananas, cannas, dahlias, sunflowers, fabulous orange tithonias. They all are vying and jostling with each other to grab your attention. But there's one plant that actually I think can hold its own, that is not exotic in the sense that it's been grown in gardens in this country since at least Elizabethan times, and it's this clematis. It's got a long name, I'm afraid. It's Clematis purpurea plana elegans. But you could just call it lovely. And it will go on flowering now right into autumn and will outlast all these tender plants from more exotic countries, and I think it's completely glorious. Well, that's it for today. But we'll be back here next week for another full 1 hour programme. So join me here at Longmeadow for that. Till then, bye-bye. Come on, YouTube, come on.
Joe Brown's joined by Josh Widdicombe and Rosemary Schrager for an extra slice of Bake Off next on BBC Two. But on BBC One now, a 50s prequel to Keeping Up Appearances. Meet a young Hyacinth in our sitcom season.